It is the month of September, everyone. In fact, today is September 11th. Also, a big happy birthday to like 90% of the world, because for some reason, every birthday is in September. But that's not even the most important thing that has happened this month, because that title goes to World Cup qualifiers. Let's get into it. We start with the absolute dogfight going on near the cut line of South American qualifiers. Argentina, Ecuador, and Brazil have already qualified, which left just 3 more automatic spots and a place in the playoffs remaining. 4th place Uruguay hadn't been in the best form as of late, but was able to book a ticket after being a Peruvian side that hasn't scored an away goal since 2022. Meanwhile, in Asunción, the streets were full of people dancing, and the city was ablaze in a patriotic fireworks show because after a 0-0 draw with South America's newest terrorist organization, Paraguay were officially returning to the World Cup for the first time since 2010. Again, this team was as low as 7th in the qualifiers with just 1 win in 6 games. To go from that to just 1 loss in your next 11 games to qualify for the whole thing automatically, that's so impressive. Gustavo Alfaro, all I'm gonna say is get ready to learn liver failure, because you will be granted free alcohol at every bar in Paraguay for all of eternity. All Colombia needed to do was win 1 game to avoid the catastrophe that they saw in 2022. Which sounds pretty straightforward and all, but then you have to remember Los Cafeteros were on a 6-game winless streak going into this. But no worries, their next opponents were the Sea-Level Merchants, and Colombia produced a convincing 3-0 win which saw James Rodriguez become the country's leading scorer in World Cup qualifiers. This would also be an emotional ending for James, who was playing his last ever home game in a Colombian shirt. But he wasn't the only one to bid farewell to his home fans. Enner Valencia in his last home game said goodbye with a goal versus Argentina, and Lionel Messi, with the knowledge that this would probably be the end for him in the famous Albiceleste, was in tears during the national anthem. Oh yeah, going back to Colombia for a second, I had a fan message me on Instagram basically begging for me to mention Dairo Moreno, who was called up to the national team for the first time in 9 years. So, you're welcome. And so that leaves us with the spot of the unknown, the position that'll keep one country's people dreaming. The playoff spot. Before the window, 3 teams were still in contention. Peru were just hanging by a thread and would have to win both of their games and see a miracle to keep their hopes alive. Which they didn't. Oh no, you don't! So that leaves us with Bolivia and current holders Venezuela. With both of them losing their first games of the window respectively, this was the scenario going into their last qualifiers of the campaign. For Venezuela, it's their rivals Colombia. A win at home would seal the deal, but if they were to draw or lose, they would need to see the same result from Bolivia. While for Bolivia, it's a date with Ancelotti's Brazil. But remember, this takes place in an area with pretty much no oxygen. Either way though, to snatch that playoff spot on the final day, Bolivia has to win. It is the ultimate mid-off. The current holders, who are the only South American nation to have never qualified, versus the Bandits, who haven't seen the world stage since 1994. Just 2 minutes in, Venezuela take the lead in the Arepas derby, and the whole stadium erupts into madness. 8 minutes later though, La Vinotinto concedes from the corner. Nevertheless, the indomitable spirit of Mano Tengo Fe struck back not even a minute later, and Venezuela restored their advantage over Bolivia. But if you thought Colombia being already confirmed meant they'd not go 100% in this game, you'd be mistaken, because these guys fucking hate Venezuela. And things were about to get even worse for La Vinotinto, as right before halftime, Bolivia win themselves a penalty, and it's converted by none other than their top scorer, peak wonder himself, Miguel Terceros. So as things stand, the Altitude Alphas overtake Venezuela. The absolute scenes. But not all is lost for the Venezuelans. There was still plenty of time left, and keep in mind, they haven't lost a single qualifier at home all campaign.
Por la izquierda, Luis Suárez que está habilitado. Luis Suárez para rematar.
Gol de Colombia.
Oh no.
Pelota por el medio para Luis Suárez. El perfil y el gol de Colombia. Luis Suárez con una hat-trick.
Oh God.
Río que no habilitado dentro del área. Richard Río remató. Gol de Colombia. 5-2.
Colombia, stop this. They're already dead. You've already qualified. What does this senseless speeding even achieve?
She fucking hates herself. She's broken. She doesn't give a fuck. Broken. She knows. She's fucking tired. She's fucking. She hates herself. She's tired.
She's not just tired.
She's fucking.
With their triumph over Brazil, Bolivia keep their World Cup dreams alive. The mountain remains immortal. And just like Bolivia, you too can sit atop a mountain as your ops struggle to breathe while chasing you. Too often, people are using unprotected Wi-Fi or plugging their info into websites without acknowledging literally any kind of risk. I mean, what are you, Bolivia, when they play under 10,000 feet? Stop being silly. You deserve better. You deserve Ecuadorian defense levels of better. You deserve Surfshark. Surfshark uses humanized privacy and security solutions to safeguard your data, meaning you can now browse the internet safely without any stress of someone stealing your personal information. And you know how scammers will use different identities to disguise themselves? Well, Surfshark actually allows you to do the same, that way you don't need to give away any of your actual information to predatory one-time use websites. Surfshark VPN is playing 4D chess! And with how World Cup qualifiers are starting to get even spicier throughout the next few months, you won't want to miss a single second of it. And thanks to Surfshark's over 3,200 servers in 100 different countries, you can access region-locked broadcasts anywhere in the world for free. So, have I got you excited now? Well, if so, you can use my link displayed on the video or in the description to get Surfshark for an extra 4 free months. And there is no risk in trying this out because Surfshark has a 30-day money-back guarantee. So use my link surfshark.com/Mac to access region-locked content anywhere in the world and keep your private information safe. And a big thank you to Surfshark, as always, for sponsoring this video. Over to North America, and we have reached the final round. How this one works is pretty simple. The remaining 12 teams will be split into 3 groups of 4. First place in each group will automatically qualify for the World Cup, while the 2 best runner-up nations will get a second chance in the Intercontinental Playoffs. In Group A, we got Panama, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Suriname. Speaking of Netherlands too, as the second lowest seeded team, they impressed a ton versus top seeded Panama and nearly escaped with the victory at the death. In the end though, both teams would kick off the 3rd round sharing the points. Meanwhile in Guatemala, fans were pretty hopeful for their national team after seeing them go all the way to the semis in the recent Gold Cup. However, their opponents El Salvador had other ideas and surprised many with a late goal to collect all 3 points. They then returned home to face another team that experienced a morale booster themselves, Suriname, and it would be the Dutch B team who would draw first blood in the 12th minute. But El Salvador would not back down and equalized in the 72nd minute with a little help from a guy named Unfunny Dick Steele. This did not faze the Surinamese against the allegedly racist crowd though, as Jerzo class scores in the 80th minute to win it for Suriname. Now returning home, Panama needed to get things on the right track after a disappointing start to the campaign. But things got even worse after Guatemala with their first shot on target score in the 35th minute. Panama wasted no time though and acquired an equalizer just 2 minutes later. Nothing could separate the two after, so it all ended at 1-1. Looking at the table early on, it is Suriname surprisingly on top with 4 points. And because of Panama's underwhelming draws, this sees El Salvador in the runners-up spot thanks to their opening victory. Over to Group B, we have Jamaica, Curacao, Trinidad and Tobago, and Bermuda. Jamaica for once didn't underwhelm to begin qualifiers and absolutely destroyed any triangle phenomena in Bermuda. Meanwhile in the Port of Spain, Trinidad and Curacao would begin the 3rd round against each other. It was all Curacao in the first half, but momentum shifted heavily towards Trinidad in the second half. But thanks to some goalkeeper heroics for both nations, the points would be shared in the end. Curacao then went on to play Bermuda at home in an unexpected thriller. The home team built up a commanding 2-goal lead by the 30th minute thanks to former Man United academy player Tahith Chong. However, Bermuda catch the Curacao defense sleeping not once but twice and level the score right before the half. But it would be Tahith Chong coming up big once again as he assists the winner for his nation. Then to end off Group B for the month, the EFL Championship, if it was a country, make easy work of Trinidad to become the only nation to go perfect 6 of 6. Which of course grants them the top spot while Curacao trails 2 points behind them in the playoff spot. Finally in Group C, Costa Rica, Honduras, Haiti, and Nicaragua. We kicked off with Haiti versus Honduras, which ended in a goalless draw with Haiti dominating but shooting more blanks than me on Hinge. Over in Nicaragua, Keylor Navas had returned from retirement because it pained him so much that his team was so ass. But come on Costa Rica, it's Nicaragua. They couldn't even beat Guadalupe to qualify for the World Cup. I'm sorry, Keylor. You don't deserve this. But don't give up just yet, Costa Ricans. In their next game, Los Ticos bagged 2 early goals versus Haiti. Let the craze cheering continue for head coach Miguel Herrera. Honduras make pretty easy work of Nicaragua with the 2-0 win, and because every other result in this group saw a draw, this actually sees the Hondurans top of the table with Costa Rica just edging Haiti for the runners-up spot due to goal difference. At last in European qualifiers, everyone has officially kicked off their campaigns, which only means this shit is about to get so much more confusing for everyone. In Group A, Antonio Rudiger was being put on skates by Slovakia all game, which costed Germany and surprised many as they lost 2-0 in their opening qualifier. Guess I need to change the title and thumbnail again. Nonetheless, Germany were able to bounce back with a 3-1 win versus Northern Ireland. But they still remain in early trouble after Slovakia managed a last-minute winner versus Luxembourg to finish September with 6 of 6 points. And because Northern Ireland has scored more goals than the Germans thanks in part to their victory versus Luxembourg, this actually sees Germany 3rd in the table. But again, it's way too early to call. Group B began with yet another Gyökeres vs Shesko derby, and just like the other one, it ended with both of them not scoring. Instead, it was Anthony Elanga with a sprinkle of brilliance that would draw first blood for the Swedes, which is cancelled out immediately into the second half by Old Man Olsen.
Dear basketball. From the moment I started rolling my dad's tube sock.
However, Sweden restored their lead in the 72nd minute, but once more, the lead is sabotaged, this time by the abysmal defending in the back. And that would continue into Sweden's next game as Kosovo stunned them with 2 counterattacks in the first half.
And shooting imaginary game-winning shots in the Great Western form.
Fy fan vad dåligt. Tack för idag. Vi ses en annan dag. Hej hej.
Now, it's probably a good time to mention that their head coach right now is John Dahl Tomasson, who is Danish. Meanwhile, favorites of the group Switzerland took the doubts personal. And maybe that was the wake-up call they needed as they destroyed Kosovo and then Slovenia to earn 6 points for the window. And as a result, they are now top of the group so far with an unexpected contender in Kosovo sitting in the playoff spot. Over in Group C, while Forest owner and Greek dictator Evangelos Marinakis argues with Boris Johnson for some reason, the Greek national team continues to look good as they roast the Belarusians in a brazen bull. However, there's still some work to be done in this project as they were then beaten pretty comfortably by Denmark at home. The Danes also picked up a draw away in Scotland earlier in the window, while the team of my other half managed a 2-0 win versus Belarus. So as it stands, Denmark and Scotland are tied on points with the Danes narrowly above due to goal difference, while Greece sit 3rd with a solid pocket of points to take forward. In Group D, Osama bin Diddy and France continue to wreak havoc in Europe. With some prime terrorism ball, the French collect 2 wins versus Ukraine and Iceland. Ukraine and Iceland's other opponent in this window were the other genocide merchants. Iceland destroyed them 5-0, while Ukraine, doing what they do best, have an underwhelming beginning to their qualification campaign. And the fans were not happy. As it stands though, the French already confirm at least a playoff spot, while Iceland hold the actual spot itself. Group E started with a Euro 2024 rematch between Turkey and Georgia, where the Turks would once again prevail. For a while now, the Turks have shown this brand new chapter. No more disappointment, only excitement awaits. And then they lost 6-0 to Spain at home. And knowing how Turkish fans are, these guys probably had to get back to the hotel with like an armored vehicle. Meanwhile, Spain didn't lose any matches, but Lamine Yamal did lose his passport. But because Turkey allowed Mikel fucking Merino to drop a hat-trick on their heads, Georgia was able to hop into 2nd through goal difference after a 3-0 win versus Bulgaria. Outside of them, Spain, to the shock of absolutely no one, lead the group. Group F delighted Turks everywhere living in Berlin, as they and the rest of the world got to see Portugal destroy Armenia 5-0. Portugal then made it 2-2 after beating their toughest opponents Hungary in a 5-goal thriller, while Hungary was taking over the reins for Turkey as the false dark horses versus Ireland. Because the moment this team has a minuscule amount of pressure put upon them, they fold faster than Asian Eurovision. But don't worry, Hungarians, at least you didn't bottle as badly as the Ravens in week 1. But Irish people, don't think that these are signs of better times. You are still miserable. Anyways, Portugal lead the group so far with Armenia currently in the playoff spot. I'm getting too excited, it's been 2 games. Last time we left off with Group G, Finland had a narrow lead, but the Netherlands still had 2 games in hand. You also had the Polish, but they were struggling due to conflicts within the dressing room. However, Poland have quickly dealt with this issue. Since being hired in July, manager Jan Urban has mended broken relationships with Lewandowski and Piotr Zielinski, and this has successfully translated onto the pitch as the Poles stole a point away from the Dutch and then got revenge against the Finnish. Fullback Matty Cash scored in both of these fixtures, so keep an eye on him because he's been thriving under this new system so far. The Netherlands did manage to collect a win to close off the window, but not without a little scare from Lithuania. Also, what the hell is the deal here, Lithuanians? You can put up a fight against the Netherlands and Finland, but you can't beat Malta in 2 games? What am I supposed to think of you? But as it stands, the Dutch take the lead in the table with the game in hand. And tied on points with them in the runners-up spot is Poland, who will be very happy with this window. Third place Finland are still in the hunt, but that loss to the Poles has taken a massive hit to their chances. In Group H, Bosnia was proving once more that Balkan blood ages like Shiska Kudo. But just behind them, tied on points, was both Austria with the game in hand and Romania. The Romanians, though, blew a 2-0 lead for Cyprus in their only game, so we can just kind of ignore them for the rest of the campaign. Austria and Bosnia, on the other hand, were going band for band. Both won their first games of the month and then would face each other. 48 minutes played, a Bosnian defender does a bad job of clearing and Marcel Sabitzer capitalizes. 1 minute later though, 39-year-old Edin Dzeko once more comes to the rescue for the Bosnians. But then 15 minutes later, Konrad Leimer scores the winner for Austria. Funnily enough though, Bosnia remain top of the group due to goal difference, but Austria can easily overtake them if they win their next fixture in October. Group I had Norway dominating after they broke Italy, but they weren't done there. In the Norwegians' only game of this window, they made Moldova look as unstable as Transnistria, putting 11 past them.
Here's how I'll torture you, David. Number 1, the marrow furnace. I'll inject liquid metal into your bones, boiling them from the inside. Number 2, the nerve harvester. Each nerve fiber will be plucked and strung, vibrating with agony. Number 3, the organ grinder.
The same Moldovan side that beat Poland 3-2 a couple years ago saw Erling Haaland march into their box and bag 5 goals. He scored as many points as the New York Giants in week 1. Meanwhile, Italy under new manager Gennaro Gattuso won versus Estonia after a slow start to the game. However, only 16 minutes into their following match, they give up a silly own goal versus the Genocide Merchants.
Ciao a tutti, votate per New Day will rise.
Fortunately, Moise Kean would come to the rescue and break through the only legal form of a blockade these guys have ever formed. But once more, the Italian defense shows as much of a spine as your average US politician. And boom, 20 trillion more to these guys' World Cup travel costs. However, Moise Kean gives the opposition a taste of their own medicine as he again occupies their space, and there's probably a good chance Moises' house will be hit by a drone in a couple weeks. But from there, Italy started finding more of a rhythm, with Politano giving them the advantage in the 59th minute, and then Raspadori adding a 4th in the 81st. It appears, though, that the Mossad recently hired more than one player, as this time Bastoni puts it in his own net in the 87th. And then 2 minutes later, the Italians once more shit the bed in defense. You know, it's already bad enough y'all aren't gonna qualify again, but now you're gonna let this happen. Tonali! And so, at the end of September, Norway looked stronger than ever at the top, and trailing behind them is Hamas. Group J, you had North Macedonia and Wales into the top 2, but Belgium still had 2 games in hand. Oh yeah, also, Kazakhstan is in this group as well, and just recently, FC Kairat just qualified for the Champions League, baby! Now, before any of you accuse me of being a bandwagon, I've had this for 2 years now. But Kazakhstan might want to borrow this to tie a noose with how this window went for them. They started by narrowly losing to Wales at home, and then they were bludgeoned by Belgium.
Better scramble like an egg before you get folded like an omelet. Jaeger.
And how about we continue to show some more love to these minnows, because they desperately need it. Liechtenstein conceded a total of 11 goals this window, 5 versus North Macedonia and 6 versus Belgium.
Better scramble like an egg before you get folded like an omelet.
I guess on a positive, at least the French parody account dedicated to this national team is still hilarious. Anyways, North Macedonia remain at the top, but Belgium are just a point away with the game in hand. Also, Wales is still in the fight, which makes me think that that matchup between them and North Macedonia on the last match day could be cinema. Group K was pretty straightforward, with England in the lead while a dogfight was happening for the runners-up spot. And England continued their perfect streak with a questionable win versus Moldova, and then just as everyone was doubting the Tukelabon, they put 5 past the Serbians in Serbia. The Serbians did manage to pull out a victory in this window, as did their good friends Albania. So the table doesn't really change at all, but do keep in mind that Serbia still has that game in hand, and they play Albania next month. And finally, in Group L, the Croatians were using age-reversing magic again as they continue to be perfect all across the board. Meanwhile, runners-up Czechia are pulling away from the pack after they beat Montenegro. If you didn't get to watch any African qualifiers this month, I feel bad for you because this shit was peak. Group A was kinda straightforward though. Egypt were still unbeaten at the top in a realm beyond anyone else. Then you had Burkina Faso holding on to the playoff spot with Sierra Leone just hanging in there. Egypt continued their winning ways with the victory versus Ethiopia and then pretty much all but settled the group after denying Burkina Faso in their own home. Burkina Faso won't be too mad though, especially since they started the window penetrating Djibouti. But the points gap still remains between them and third place Sierra Leone, who just keep their hopes alive with the win versus Ethiopia. Burkina Faso and Sierra Leone will play in October, which will most definitely decide who advances to the playoffs. Group B, though, was way more exciting, as the unlikely candidates DR Congo narrowly edged out favorite Senegal for the automatic qualification spots. You also had an even more unlikely candidate in Sudan just a point away in third. Senegal, though, snapped them back into reality, and then the Sudanese hopes died by their own hands after ending the month with a loss to a Togo side who had not won a single game up to that point. Meanwhile, leaders DR Congo began their window strong with a 4-1 pummeling of South Sudan. This would then set up a heavyweight battle between them and Senegal. For Senegal, this was an opportunity to recover from their underwhelming start, but for DR Congo, this was life or death. Because over the last decade, fans in their own home stadium have had to witness their nation disappoint them in the most excruciating ways imaginable. 2018 qualifiers, DR Congo in just 2 minutes blew a 2-0 lead versus Tunisia, which would have seen them more than likely qualify. 2022 playoffs, after a miraculous start versus favorites Morocco, DR Congo conceded a late goal and then went on to be dismantled in the away leg. And once more, another crucial qualifier would be played in the Stade des Martyrs. But this time, the spirit amongst the fans felt different. The Congolese team looked better than ever, and were hungry to finally end this drought. 28 minutes played, Cedric Bakambu swiftly turns and wails it into the back of the net for DR Congo, and the whole stadium explodes into excitement. 7 minutes later, the Congolese once more troubled the abysmal Senegalese defense, and Yohan Wissa doubles the lead. This could finally be the moment for the Stade des Martyrs. However, Senegal would not go down without a fight, and with some luck off the post, Pape Gueye is in the right place at the right time to keep the Senegalese alive. Then, early in the second half, Nicholas Jackson with a flash of brilliance scores the equalizer, and just like that, the Congolese lead is gone. The crowd is now so silent you could hear a pin drop, but as it stands, DR Congo still remain at the top of Group B, and even better, the football had left Sadio Minor. But the moment Senegal decided to play with 11 men again, the guy who came in for Captain Creeper took just 2 minutes to assist the winning goal in the 87th minute. With that result, Senegal now return to the driver's seat, while the Spurs of Africa once more will have to settle for the playoffs. Going into September, Group C had its own surprises, with an emerging South African team dominating, with Rwanda and Benin 5 points behind, and Nigeria in fourth. Nigeria needed results in this window to avoid failing to qualify again, and even though they started with a very unconvincing performance versus Rwanda, the 3 points were all that mattered now. However, with the date in South Africa, this would be difficult, and Nigeria sure as hell didn't make it any easier for themselves. Fortunately, Nigerian defenders might not be able to do their actual jobs, but can throw their whole bodies at a ball. And thanks to some classic CAF organization, Nigeria saved themselves a point. But that still wasn't enough, because Benin got 2 for 2 in the window to remain 3 points above Nigeria with 2 games to go. It's not over just yet though. Nigeria and Benin will play their last qualifiers of the round against each other, but chances could be very slim entering that match depending on the other results. Group D, it just keeps coming, man. Cape Verde, who aren't even in this year's AFCON, were top of the group with favorites Cameroon a point below. You also had third place Libya, who are now being managed by former Senegal coach Aliou Cissé. And Cissé's Libyan regime would begin with 2 solid victories versus Angola and the GeoGuessr meta country. Meanwhile, after winning their first games of the window, Cape Verde and Cameroon would battle it out for the automatic qualification spots. And it would be the Criollos who would end up on top thanks to a single goal from Daylon Livramento. And so Cape Verde, a nation with a population of just over 500k, are now just 1 win away from qualification for the first time ever. Cameroon will now have to settle for the playoff spot, but with that loss, it also opens the door for Cissé's Libya to potentially steal second on the final day. Oh, and I guess also 4th place Angola are still in the fight too. Okay, maybe not. Over to Group E, things are a lot less chaotic as Morocco would continue to bully the opposition, and after a 5-0 win versus Niger, they have officially become the first African nation to qualify for the World Cup. While 3rd place Niger were able to bounce back with a clutch win versus 2nd place Tanzania to shrink the gap to just 1 point with 1 game left for both. Group F was all Ivory Coast and Gabon last time out, and would be the same throughout the September window as well. The top 2 won their first games and then played out a goalless draw with each other, so nothing changes besides the fact that literally everyone else is officially eliminated. Also, crazy ass stat, Ivory Coast still has yet to concede even once. Over to Group G, favorites Algeria sat first. Nothing too crazy there. The real entertainment though was the fight for the runners-up spot. Mozambique was shocking the whole African scene by holding the playoff position. 3 points behind them were other unexpected competitors in Botswana and Uganda. And just hanging in there, desperately needing a good window, was Guinea, who everyone initially believed were the favorites for the playoffs. And things were about to shake up even more. Third place Botswana lose both of their games, while fourth place Uganda destroy second place Mozambique, and then finish off the window with 6 of 6 after an easy sweeping of Somalia. That now means Uganda move up to the playoff spot with just 2 games remaining, and this would not be possible had it not been for Alan Okello's 3 goals in his last 4 qualifiers. And with all this ruckus, it meant that if Algeria could beat Guinea in their last match of September, they'd officially return to the big dance. Followed by them though, you got the aforementioned Uganda sitting in the playoff spot. What a story that could be. But we can't be for certain just yet. Mozambique trailed them by goal difference, and while unlikely, Botswana and Guinea are still in the race. In Group H, Tunisia was absolutely dominant, having still not conceded a single goal yet. And after another 2 victories in September, they become the second African nation to qualify for the World Cup in 2026. So this now left us with Namibia and Liberia battling it out for second. The Namibians suffered their first loss of the campaign versus Malawi, but fortunately for them, Liberia lost 3-0 to Tunisia. Namibia won their second game of the window, so now Liberia had to beat Malawi at home to keep their hopes alive. However, the Liberians built up a 2-0 lead by the 61st minute, and then they conceded 2 in a matter of 8 minutes. So now looking at the table, Namibia hold a 4-point advantage above the rest of the pack. And finally, Group I. Ghana, who aren't even in this year's AFCON, have been revitalized and now find themselves first in the group. Then you had some surprising appearances in the battle for the playoff spot between current holders Comoros, third place Madagascar, who as of late had been making a late run to achieve the near impossible, and an underwhelming fourth place Mali side, who many at the beginning believed to be the favorites to finish runners-up. The window began with Mali versus Comoros, and the Malians would once again take care of business. However, in the Eagles' second game, they lost 1-0 away in Ghana. This was able to open the door for the country named after a movie to hop into second thanks to wins against the 2 worst teams in the group. And with Ghana being the only team with 4 or more points, they maintain a 3-point gap between second, despite them giving Chad their first point of the whole campaign, while Comoros now fall to third after yet another disappointing window, and just hanging in there is Mali, who once more make DR Congo look like a clutch team.
Ici, moi je suis malien, je veux que mon fils joue pour le Mali. Écoutez ce qu'il me dit.
Non,
tu dis quoi?
Je veux jouer en Angleterre. On sait pas Mali.
Tu joues pas pour Mali?
Non.
Pourquoi?
Je joue en Angleterre.
Mais faut jouer pour Mali? Non. Comme ça tu vas être capitaine numéro 10?
Non.
Tout ça c'est sa maman.
No.
October is going to be a wild closer to this exciting group though. Madagascar still have to play both 3rd and 4th place currently, and the Comoros have still yet to visit Ghana. So funnily enough, this is Mali's chance to somehow steal it on the final day, because outside Madagascar, they have Chad, who have only gotten 1 point so far. Now with just 2 games remaining for everyone besides, I guess, the one with Morocco, since Eritrea was banned from this competition, let's take a look at the rankings of the runners-up countries so far. And this is really important because after the end of the October window, there will only be 4 teams moving on to the playoff round actually. Gabon have the most points with 19, Madagascar and DR Congo sit with 16 points, and just above the cut line is currently Burkina Faso on 15 points, who edge out a 4-way tie due to goal difference, with the most notable country at risk of not qualifying being Cameroon. Again, if you aren't watching any African qualifiers, I feel bad for you because this shit is peak. And so that was another World Cup qualifier review, the September one. But before we go, let's quickly go over all the teams that have qualified so far. Japan became the first non-host nation to qualify on March 20th, 2025. They were then followed by New Zealand on March 24th. A day later, Iran and then Argentina qualified on March 25th. Into June, Uzbekistan, South Korea, and Jordan all qualified on the 5th. 5 days later, Australia joined them. And on the same day as the Aussies' 6th straight berth, both Brazil and Ecuador qualified. And then we go into the most recent month of September. On the 4th, Uruguay, Paraguay, and Colombia all qualified qualified through the remaining automatic spots. One day later, Morocco qualified as the first African nation, and finally, Tunisia would join them on September 8th. All these guys now joined the US, Mexico, and Canada. So this now leaves 30 spots up for grabs, and come the end of October, we're going to see a lot more African nations qualify, and maybe even a couple European ones. But yeah, I guess now the question is, has your team qualified? Or if they haven't, do they still have a chance to qualify? Do you want to kill yourself? Of course, though, a massive shout out to all our members, including Janos Balas, German Sayu 7th, Jeremiah Owusu Ajimang, Brazilian Fury, Django, Anazir Makalankam, Alex Rod, Kentra Gachak, Saint Terrence, Sylvia Citrus, Rashford Enthusiast, Cheesebait, Winder Gel, Finn Likes Rugby More, Davox, The Portugizer, Wise Orange, Polo Protos, Von Fan, Lucien Von Croix, A Ghostly Owl, Coney Wolves, Lickstap, Matanai, Apollo, Congo Jazz 1, Thrilling ADT 13, Los Milos, La James Braun, Vasino, Napside, Money Cash Hose, Quantavious Pork, Lilia Lover, Student Monk, Red Yellow, Kevin Mojica, Fuxi, MX San, Harry Maguire's Left Toenail, Flaquito, Kev C, Dominic Griffin, Kyler Krez, Mohamed Altanib, Nish, Patrick Barley, Rashford God 5, Raspberry Ale, and Unbroken Persona. If you'd like to become a member, there'll be a link down below and up in the annotations. You can follow me on Twitter if you want, follow my Instagram if you like, follow my Twitch. Gonna be doing more watch-alongs for Arsenal over the weekend, as long as the games are not at like fucking 7:30 in the morning. But until then, I'll see you guys. Bring me back to the good old days.